Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome to this live premiere if you're currently here in the live chat. As we do go along, you can share your thoughts, opinions and reactions to what I'm going to be talking about. And you can talk about other things in between. Whether we get any dodgy people showing up or not, just see how things go, obviously. Now, today's video, we're actually going to be looking at something quite important. Going to be try and narrow it down and get a rough idea of where Candice Cooley was referring to the classified location they have been searching in, if you have heard of in recent time. If you don't, recently, maybe like a week or so ago, you had Equisearch, you had a K9 unit, you had Mob Crew Chris, you had Justin and Candice out there for like 5-6 days searching down a wash. We don't know which one, we don't know exactly where. Shortly after that, Lance came over and briefly had a look in one of the washes, which I believe is the one near Lucin Pond, that one. So it's just, at that point, it was trying to understand, was Lance in the same spot as Candice and the rest? Or would he at least in the correct wash, but not in the correct area when looking about? I mean, possibility, you know, you're looking at the ground, you see the track marks, must have been recent, possibly, right? Well, hopefully in this video, we can narrow it down a little bit more. I think before we go on any further, if you didn't watch my previous video or the one before that of the Dylan Rounds case, make sure to check those out after watching this. There'll be a link down below in the pinned comment section, okay? And I think now what is important to do is to share with you Candice Cooley's response about the gas consumption of Dylan's truck from start to finish when Dylan was last using it, and then when whoever started using it to dispose of Dylan, right? This video, what I'm going to play to you is of the recent interview on No Thanks channel, Doug's. Chris asked a question, Candice Cooley responds, gives key dates, and even gives the actual distance mileage. And bear in mind, this is quite important, if not very important in a way, because if you remember, Dylan's truck, the actual truck data and mileage was lost. And that was because Justin or Candice or both were driving it because it had the green thumbs up from the police to take it back to wherever. And as soon as you start, driving the truck, the previous data is automatically wiped. And obviously, if it wasn't wiped, then you could have checked the distance, maybe the possible location, maybe coordinates, I don't know how deep it is, and you might have been able to find Dylan much sooner. That didn't happen, but we may have an alternative. So I'm going to play this clip to you right now. It's not too long. Just make sure to listen to it, internalize, and then we'll maybe analyze it briefly and then go on from there. Okay, are you ready?
Go ahead.
Can I ask two questions real quick? How much gas was in the truck? I know I've asked you this, or someone's asked you this, but
okay, so there was enough gas in that pickup exactly, and I took a picture of it to come because he filled up Thursday night in Montello, came back Friday to plant, go to that one place we were at, and come back, and it almost matches perfectly, Chris.
Wow. I was gonna say,
okay.
60 to 65 miles.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Almost perfectly.
Okay.
So his truck obviously was the one used.
Nothing else makes sense because too much gas is gone just to, I mean, that pickup was, and like I said, you still go back to the fact that everything was clean except for the front wheel wells. You can't drive in mud and only have your front wheel wells be the only thing that gets mud. That's not a possibility. It gives you, it's such a rate. it's a small radius, but it's such a vast radius. But it truly limits it between the gas in the pickup, knowing when Dylan was that morning, knowing, where his phone was in the general area. It really gives us a small area, but it is such a hard area to search. And I've already started, I got my maps up and I got my pins and I got my Google Earth, and I've already got it planned. If we don't get our answers this winter before it freezes, that'll be my first thing. Is it will be called out to the public, and we will take that 15-mile stretch and go arm in arm, and we will find him, because he is there. Nothing else makes sense.
Okay, so you heard it there. Interesting breakdown. Kind of, interpreted from my previous video I did when we were looking at some key unanswered questions, and that's why it was structured back then, because it was influenced by this interview response within. So I'll do a brief poll right now. Do you agree with Candice Cooley? The area she is roughly describing, do you think that's where Dylan is at? Or do you disagree and think he's elsewhere? Different direction, bigger radius? Let me know down below. I mean, like Candice was referring to the cell phone pings, the location of them, how they were distributed. You got to take that in mind. And if most of the pings are concentrated within that radius, then it makes it a bit more believable, right? Obviously, if you had Brenner's cell phone pings, that would definitely reinforce it more, right? If you had Brenner's cell phone ping and it was like one odd one way out that way, you could be thinking, why way over there? What happened after that? He returned back. Maybe that's where he disposed of Dylan. We don't have that though. So we'll see how things go. You heard Candice Cooley say, things don't quite work out after the winter, I believe. Said that just get the public in, arm in arm, 15-mile stretch and search. I assume that's basically if this concentrated effort doesn't quite work out, despite it feeling hopeful, then it's like all hell breaks loose. Throw the distance out of the books. Throw the restrictions out of the books. General public, you're all welcome now to come on down. Come on. Like that. I mean, could that have been done earlier on? I'm not quite sure. Now, because this is on Candice Cooley still, I actually want to go to the Facebook page if it's possible right now, because it gives an idea of the lack of communication from the LE. And this all ties in with this whole recent search and all the resources put in, because I know a few people have been kind of skeptical, thinking, why now? Why not earlier? Let's just head on over to the Facebook page right now and I'll read the post out to you. Here we are on the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page. One thing I will say is when I did check last night, I had a few technical difficulties. Technically, I could get on, but it kept saying invalid. Like I was locked out, even though I didn't have an account. For a second, I thought, did they restrict the page further? So like random public couldn't view it anymore? That would have been a bit odd. But it looks like it's working now. And, it's in the correct order as well when we scroll down. So just as a brief link back to this whole video, the whole importance of it, both the recent search and it being concentrated and focused in an area Candice Cooley has predicted based off the mileage and the gas consumption of Dylan's truck when it was used and where it went at the end to dispose of Dylan, right? You see some of these brief example photos. If you want a deeper, in-depth look at that wash, not exactly sure which one it was, but it's a wash. I have done a previous video on my channel. Make sure to check it out. We look at it deeper. We do comparisons of other potential washes and try and get to the bottom of it. Okay? That was 30th of October when it was posted by Candice Cooley. Okay? We just scroll down here. These are just, standard posts, what you'd see, levels of support, people giving their opinions. And then we get to this point here. Candice Cooley shared a post. Now, it's not so much the post, it's more the caption, which is new. Candice Cooley, 16 hours ago, she said 6 weeks later and still no change and no help from Box Elder County Sheriff's Office in finding Dylan. So you kind of have a bit of a, like, do you call it a timestamp? No, that's time. You kind of have a date to how far it goes back in terms of Box Elder County Sheriff's Office going silent, starting to become submissive, right? I just wanted to share this with you so you get an idea of how long it's been. Now, in terms of this search, which was recent, probably like a week ago or a bit longer, I mean, you're still saying like 5 weeks of silence from then till back then. You get what I'm saying? So from like a week ago or so, it's 5 weeks of silence. So you could say, why did it take Candice Cooley and some of the other people to get together and do the search when they could have done it much earlier on without the fear of Box Elder County Sheriff's Office getting in the way? I mean, if people still want to reinforce that, I know some people have pointed it out and said, well, this recent search, why was it not done much earlier on? Candice Cooley did respond in, I think, the interview of Doug's and said, well, we couldn't because Box Elder County didn't allow us. And then people now, when seeing this post, might think, well, that's a slight contradiction by Candice Cooley because look at this, 6 weeks of silence. At least 6 weeks ago, they could have done the search 6 weeks ago. But instead, they did it like a week ago. You get what I'm saying? It might be over a week, okay? But in terms of this silence, yeah. Though Candice Cooley did say with this recent search, they did get the thumbs up by Box Elder County Sheriff's Office. They didn't come down to assist, but they said, yeah, you can go ahead and do it. Maybe they were just simply waiting for approval of Box Elder County Sheriff's Office. But then that would be a contradiction in itself because why would Candice Cooley wait around for approval when she was like, screw it, we're going to reveal this bit of information and that, whether the Box Elder County like it or not due to the way they handled the case. So it's like back and forth behaviour. Oh, I'll listen to Box Elder County. No, I won't now. I don't respect them, what they've done. Now I will respect Box Elder County and I'll hold stuff back. No, I'm going to reveal it all now because I've had enough. Well, I am going to wait now for several weeks to get on with this search because I want to have the thumbs up from Box Elder County. Good, now we can do it. Do you see that pattern? You can contest it if you want in the chat, or you can reinforce it. I just wanted to highlight it, a bit of relevancy. What was this all to do with anyway? Yeah, this was just like an older one, if you can remember, where it was showing Brenner in jail, how he appeared physically. You know, shorter beard, you know, bit more cleaned up. Just a brief little question before we continue. Is there any mug shots of him, like on a main page on the web? Yes or no? Or is that later on? Leave your thoughts down below. And that's about it for there. What's this? When was this? 11th of November. Did I read this one? Yeah, we've seen this one in a previous video. Okay. I think now we should move on. One final thing I want to highlight before we get into this map analysis. It's still somewhat of a rough one. It's a work in progress. So it can be added to, updated, switched and changed as time goes on, whether it be the next day or a week later or a month later, or whenever Candice Cooley provides another update, and we can always refer back to it. With this being a live video premiere, some people could have suggestions in the chat of locations and routes, okay? Take note of it. But I can't physically look at them and apply it to this map analysis at the same time, real time, because it's a live video premiere pre-recorded. but obviously I will be in the chat. I can look through the chat box and note it down possibly, or you can leave comments down below in the comment section to type up a paragraph, just like Indiana does, or just like certain coordinates to exactly where you think it is, or possible roads and routes, Pigeon Road, Pilot Road, you know, key names like that, if you have any suggestions, okay? It's working with what I've got at this moment in time. Just like with Don Hately's place of living, there was a few people complaining, saying you have no clue, it's not this, it's not that. Well, that's the whole point of the video, to eliminate locations, because at the end of the day, I'm working with what I have. Do I have coordinates? No. Do we have people that claim to know where the place is? Yes. But do they know exactly for definite where it is? No. Will they reveal the location properly? No. Visually, but not in terms of numbers. And coordinates are a lot more precise than a little visual interpretation, right? Yes, you did have the likes of Lance with this whole recent Lucin visit coming over and even recording it from a distance. Yeah, that's from a distance. You try visualizing that angle from that road, even though it's not named or mentioned in the video, and you got to try and piece that up with maps. It's not exactly easy. And with certain mountains, hills, lumps and bumps looking the same, just like camels' humps, it can be a bit difficult at times, right? You just remember when we were first covering the case on my channel, trying to get the coordinates of the grain shed. If you asked that question now, where's the grain shed, people would laugh at you, take the piss out of you and criticize you, because they'll be like, duh, it's not easy, everybody's seen it. And it's like, if you've only just come in, you're not going to know everything from the beginning, right? People come in at different times, so they're not going to know. But a quick 1, 2, 3, here's the coordinates, it locks them right in. Humans failed to provide that when I simply asked a question at the start. And then one individual, can't remember who exactly it was, just came in and said, here's the coordinates. They didn't complain, they didn't resist, they didn't criticize, they didn't take the piss. They were just like, yeah, sure, whatever, here's the coordinates. Even if it was very straightforward, or it was answering me in the face, even though I wasn't aware, they still give the coordinates. And it's like that, it's that fucking simple. But obviously most humans fail to do that, right? You know, when it comes to this stuff, you got to be like level 99, high level commander, know everything, be a complete expert and this and that. And it reminds me of the next thing where people say, oh, you have no clue what you're talking about. Everything you say is wrong. Everything you say, everything what I say. The thing is, I'm not claiming to know everything, am I? You get other people that come in and claim, maybe in their bios, in their about section, or even in their comments, claim that they're very intelligent and they know exactly what they're doing and they've done this and they've done that. And it's like, when a human has to reveal and publicly announce that they're intelligent, there's probably a high chance it's the opposite. You know what I'm saying? If you are this or you are that, then you don't have to really prove it. You can just demonstrate it in your own actions naturally. That's as simple as it is, right? So we put that aside. We get onto Google Earth Maps now, and I will talk you through it, okay? Here we are on the maps once again. I mean, we've gone through a lot of different alternatives, right? As for the markers, whether they're color-coded or not, I can explain it through so you're not confused, and then we can tell the story in brief. If you want the full story, possibilities of what happened and how and who involved, you can check my previous videos out for story time. I can get you a glass of milk and then you can drink it as the story is told to you. Do you want a blanket? Are you in bed? Are you warm and comfortable? Stuff like that. Really, the only two markers which aren't as important, one of which is the one in Wendover, as you see down here. That one is kind of irrelevant because what we're looking at, first of all, is Thursday, which was the 26th of May, following into Friday, following into Saturday. They're the key days we're looking at within this video as described by Candice Cooley, the order and pattern of the truck's whereabouts, movement and gas consumption. Okay, we zoom in here. We've got a few different markers, of course. Okay, the chop shop down there arguably is also irrelevant for this unless it matches the distance, but most likely that location down there is nowhere where Candice Cooley and the crew were searching, so that's why that's the second unimportant one. Okay, as for these blue lines, I'll describe that very shortly. As for the red line, I'll describe that very shortly, and so on with the yellow one. We look over here, you wonder what that triangle is. Basically, it's not got anything to do with this surrounding area. I just used this spot because it was the blankest part on the map, because all these rocks get in the way, obstructions, this is flat. Treat this like a notepad, okay? A piece of paper if you used to write on it. That's why I did that. The pyramid effect, in which the total distance from Thursday to Saturday, 65 miles, as described by Candice Cooley, okay? Thursday to Saturday. How can you break that down though? How much mileage from Thursday to Friday night? How much mileage there? And then how much mileage was done on Saturday? Most likely the time when somebody else got in charge of Dylan's vehicle and disposed of Dylan, right? This is where we break it down and we look at the first point of the pyramid at the bottom. Lucin to Montello, there and back 52 miles, okay? What you got to understand is I'm doing a rough version. There may be alternative ways to get to Montello, some shorter, some longer. I chose the one I believe Dylan took, okay? You might think different. That's normal. You can leave your thoughts down below. You can either reinforce or counter with a counter argument, okay? We zoom out and we look at that one to begin with. Forget the red line, we look at that later. Forget the blue lines, we look at that later. We zoom on here, Dylan's farm. We refer back to Thursday, okay, which would have been the 26th of May, okay? And Candice Cooley said on a Thursday, Dylan went to Montello to get gas. And that's like when the payments, the transactions took place with Dylan's bank account, paying for the gas, okay? So Dylan, I don't know the exact timestamp, I will acknowledge that, but Candice Cooley did not provide. So Dylan, on the 25th of May, on the 26th of May, Thursday, gets in his truck and drives to Montello. The route, I believe, is down here up to, well, just before Sun Tunnels, and then taking this alternative path as like a shortcut, which skips across, as you can see. Apologies about the rendering, that's not my problem, it's typical Google. Getting to this point, I can re-show you when it decides to load up, okay? So we'll look back so you can see where we've come so far. From down there, skipping across, not going through the grain shed gate because, not having access to it at the time maybe. Coming round here, this bend, and then going on this main dirt road, as we've described several times, as you would have seen in my videos, approaching the border, right? Now, why is this little marker here? This is the total distance from Lucin to Montello, one way. If you used to come back, it'd be 26 plus 26 miles, right? So that's why it's 52 in total. You got that? So, Dylan coming down here on a Thursday. As said, there might be alternative routes to get there. Eventually crossing over the rail tracks to actually get on the Montello side of the town. Here you can see there is a clear crossing. And then once at this point, there's another crossing here. Either he could have gone up that way and then turned left and go on the main highway, I believe. Or it could have been by the side of the railway track, because it does look like a dirt road by itself, right? If people are like, no, this is unlike Dylan. No, this is not it. This is not possible. This is not a dirt road for normal people. It's public. Oh my God. No. As said, there are alternative routes. I'm just doing this one based off my opinion, okay? Coming all the way down here, you see Montello in the distance. Just drag and drag. I'll zoom out as well so it's quicker to get there. There you go. As well, you see the main highway there, and there is like a dirt path here which does cross on over, as you can see, and then you're on the main road going into Montello town, as you see all the buildings around here, as you can see. As for the gas station to get a hold of gas, we zoom in here. Unfortunately, it doesn't want to load. There we go. This is the gas station. You can see the pumps where you'd park up by the side, fill in. And then most likely you go inside and then pay there. And that's what Dylan did on a Thursday. He's filled up his truck. That's quite important. Was it a complete full tank? Possibly. It depends how much was in his truck before filling it up. It would make sense to fill it up completely. That's, in a way, a normal thing to do. What we've got to take in mind, the gas prices can be costly. We saw the Google map reviews of the place. Some saying it's closed, other people saying the toilet is restricted or unclean, and others were saying it cost a lot within the place. That's probably because it's remote. There's a bit of a high demand, not much else, not like any other opportunities present, so that's why you'd go here and people focus on it and make more money. So, what happened after this? Well, you could have got some food, but we're not going too much into that. So that's Thursday, right? Thursday complete. Now, what about Friday? That's the 27th of May, okay? Dylan remained here from Thursday to Friday. He stopped over the night, most likely maybe in Kurt Wadsworth's trailer or somewhere very nearby, okay? And then on Friday, the 27th of May, Candice Cooley did say that later on he left. So you'd assume when returning back, he would have gone the same way he came. Now that could be up for debate as well. He might have gone a different way back. He might have took a shorter route or a longer route. But I just want to keep the mileage somewhat consistent and not too all over the place. Then it makes it a bit easier to follow, okay? So basically, Dylan returning back to his farm later on Friday. Why? Well, to get on with his farm work. And as we said, when we were referring to the weather at the time, with the rain coming on in, how would Dylan know about it? Was it talking town of Montello? Was it whilst in the bar hearing the weather report? Or was it Dylan's phone? People did say that Dylan used his weather app a lot. It would make perfect sense. If you're out in the fields, you're out somewhere, whether it be doing your own farm work, custom farm work, aside from keeping track of time, it's good to keep a track of weather so you know when to plan and what to do, what can be done and what can't be done. Do you need to push back something or bring something early to get done? And that would be probably the seeds. That's what encouraged him to drive back. So, providing he went the same way, or roughly speaking, it would have been another 26 miles. Hence, the overall total distance from there and back from Thursday to Friday night, 52 miles, okay? And we just skip over here so we can get to it quicker. There we go, back at Dylan's farm. Now, what about Saturday? Well, most likely, if Dylan was seeding the night before around this area, his grain truck must have been present to get a hold of the seeds, right? And when he finished at night, he parked the grain truck or left the grain truck here in this area, along with his truck, which was used earlier on and the day before to get to Montello and fill up, right? Dylan's truck didn't move from there on Friday night up to Saturday morning until later in the day, when it was used, it was by a different individual. Okay, so we just zoom out for a second. We go back over here to the triangle. 52 miles by Dylan driving. But what about the remainder? What about the remaining mileage? Well, we look here. 13 miles. 13 miles possibly covered on the Saturday later on by another individual from Dylan's farm to the classified place described by Candice Cooley and where they've been searching. We've got to try and understand where this classified place is, where it could truly be, right? 13 miles. You got to understand, you got to split that down. So 6.5 miles there and back. And the reason why we say there and back is because when looking at Dylan's truck, post Dylan's disappearance, when the family did come on the 30th of May, they did find Dylan's pickup truck, the one that was used on Thursday, the 25th of May, following into Friday, and then returned back later Friday night. Okay, that truck, the burgundy one, the Ford F-150, that on the 30th of May was found here. It was as if it was never moved. So it's like, well, okay then, maybe it wasn't. But when looking closer, as we said about the seat being adjusted forwards, set to all-wheel drive, and the most giveaway sign, it supposedly being power washed, pressure washed down, but most of the mud still remaining underneath the wheels, like the arch bit. So it must have gone down into something to splash the water and the mud up, such as a wash. Would Dylan do that? Probably not. So it coinciding with Saturday, and as described by Candice Cooley, all the evidence pushing on the day of Saturday, the 28th of May, that it probably was used when disposing of Dylan. Okay? Does that make sense? So, we zoom out. Just take a little break if you want to visualize it, right? Okay. So, just as a very random side note, I think it was Cleo. She said she wanted me to sing like something random or some like random line. Was it like Maria? Was it do 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 Maria? Nice to see ya. Will that do? And then, you know, the other catch line could be Cleopatra coming at ya. Okay. But if it wasn't that Maria and it was Ave Marie, it could be something like Will that do? I'm sure it will. If you want the ambient version, you can, you know, look at my abandoned explorations, okay? So we put that aside. Probably wasn't the best, but it's on the spot. It wasn't prepared. We return back to the Dylan case. Now, aside from that yellow line as described, which was the journey of Dylan's from Thursday to Friday night, what are these other lines? Well, I think we'll describe the red one. The red one is just like a placeholder to demonstrate what 5 miles looks like. That's the length of it, the distance. On foot, in that direction, walking across. As described by Candice Cooley, that's what Dylan would do in the past, right? To reinforce about the whole truck being left here, the pickup one, possibility that if Dylan was successfully able to park it in the grain shed, the grain truck, and if he was to make it back to his farm, he'd have to walk back, most likely, because he wouldn't have any other vehicle to get back. Does that make sense? I just wanted that as a little placeholder and another example of mileage when on foot. Okay. As for these blue lines, very rough, not exact. Take in mind, Google Earth does not have a radius tool. So I made my own one up. It's not a circle, but it's a rough one. Okay? So, north up to here is about 6 miles in distance. And then east over here is about 6 miles in distance. And then south down here is about 6 miles in distance. So you get the idea. It's just to demonstrate to you how far out it could possibly go. Now, by no means am I saying, oh, so what? Am I just saying that, let's say Brenner got in Dylan's truck, disposed of Dylan, and drove all the way down this road, all the way up to here, across the tracks, and then stopped somewhere up this way? No, I'm not saying that. It's just like a rough line to then focus in on the midsection, okay? We'll just have a brief look here. Now, I guess this is yet another location I forgot to bring up in the past because I've only just come across it now on the spot. So you understand how, although it's a ghost town, there are many interesting objects and possible artifacts or abstract pieces you can come across. And here, simply containers. The coordinates are on screen right now if you wish to note them down. Once again, I say that these locations, there's no harm in searching, whether they're locked or not. Look inside. Is Dylan inside? Yes or no? Has it been talked about? Not really. All the talk has been about the wash, the grain shed, mine shafts, a little bit about caves, and that's it. At this moment in time, Lance Kelly, when interviewed by The Sun, US, was, focusing on the idea that Dylan's in a mine shaft. Fair enough, okay. But what about a container, a storage container, big enough to store someone in the middle of nowhere? No one's going to hear him banging on the side, right? No one's going to visit it that often if it's just for storage, bits and bobs, or even if it's just an abandoned one. We've seen several containers out there scattered about. So, just once again to highlight the boldness of these locations and the importance, I'm going to slightly reword the poll this time round, okay, so it's not too repetitive. Do you think there is a chance that Dylan, alive or not, is held captive in a storage container unit like this, as an example? Yes or no? It'd be interesting to see your thoughts, okay? So, we zoom out, right? So, where do we go from here? Well, we've got the 52 miles mapped out, which was the one in yellow. 26 down back, which would equal 52. Now, on the spot, we need to make up 13 miles worth of distance. 6.5 miles somewhere, and then literally the same way back. Okay? Can it be done? Well, we can make an attempt. I think I'm going to attempt one right now, okay? And then I will take a factor into mind, just so I don't get too lost with my thoughts, okay? So, Dylan's truck's down here, as it should be. There we go. Take this marker to about there. Just zoom on in. Try and make it as precise as possible, of course, onto the grain shed here. 6.50 miles. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not great with distance. 6.5 miles. Is this 6.5 miles on screen right now? You might think, it's a bit stupid, Andrew. It's just because it says 6.5, but then there's a 0, so that means 50. 50 is a different number to 5. 6.5 would be like 0.5. So how do I do it? Is there a way around it? Is that more like it? Can anyone tell me in the chat right now? Does this, to me, this looks like 6.5 miles, right? That is 6.50. You know, this is a very good example of how humans could take the piss and say, you don't know. But it's also a good moment to highlight reasoning ability, understanding. Some know, some don't. Some may know other things other people don't, and vice versa, okay? But I think I corrected myself on the spot. Let me know. The only reason why I say that is because if I just said, oh yeah, there's 6.5 miles, that's incorrect, right? I mean, it does highlight to the wash, but it probably give false direction, okay? If that's truly the case, then we're looking at coming short of the grain shed, which is a bit odd. The reason why I say that is if Dylan was taken to a wash, if that's how we're reinforcing it, then it exceeds the estimated mileage on here. So how could it have been done? And this is where we tie it back in. If it all went down here and Dylan was hurt inside of the shed, Dylan most likely was left there, laying on the ground. Someone like Brenner had to travel down to Dylan's farm to get a hold of the truck. Or at least someone had to, right? Because how else would it work? Is it okay if I just do an on-the-spot one? And I want to take this into mind with the whole phone ping, okay? So, if you remember, and I'll just talk you through it very quickly in case you don't know, one of the first phone pings of Dylan's, which was by him, was here. Here's a little coordinates if you want. And this was 6:51 a.m. in the morning on the 28th of May, Saturday. Okay? Dylan called grandmother Karen rounds, got to park the grain truck in the grain shed. When he made that call, most likely he was already in his grain truck, right? On the way down. Few complications with the gate because it was supposedly locked. Probably resolved. Grain truck came down to here. Okay, that was where the second phone ping was. But the third phone ping was back at Dylan's farm. So this is where we've got to try and understand it. If that original rough distance check, which went up to here, was 6.5 and not 6.50 miles, then it could tie in line. But it doesn't. It comes up short, which is like down here. And Dylan probably isn't here. He's probably further up, more concealed, right? So that's why I refer back to the alternative one, that the third phone ping, which was at the farm down there, was by Dylan as well. And most likely Dylan had to walk all the way back because he had no other truck or alternative. He got back to his farm, did whatever, and then the fourth phone ping was back up there. And it's like, why would Dylan have to go all the way back? Unless either he forgot something or he was asked to go back, like Brenner asked him. And at this point, this could tie in line with the whole, could it tie in line with the consumption? Bear in mind, this is raw. This is on the spot. What you're witnessing is introspection of my own mind, thinking it through, trying to calculate as we go along. It wouldn't make any difference to the fact that the mileage and the distance as stated in numbers don't lie, so it wouldn't really matter whether Dylan took it back there or not. It wouldn't change the whole distance. Candice Cooley isn't saying like 13 miles worth of distance is partially by Dylan and partially by the suspect. She's just saying it vaguely. So, you leave your thoughts in the chat. We'll have to try a different alternative, okay? Whoever it was driving the vehicle, going muddy. Is there any other shortcuts? Any other washes? If you have joined right now, make sure to rewind to the beginning so you're not confused, because it's very important, this. I think let's just return back to the concept. Taking in mind the distance, taking in mind Dylan is over here. Why would Dylan's phone ping, his third one, be all the way down here back at his farm? Is it because Dylan returned back at this moment? But then why was the fourth phone ping back at Jim Brenner's trailer? Is that because Dylan was called back to meet up with Brenner to have a word, and that's when Dylan was attacked, assaulted? If that was the case, if Dylan walked back in the first place for the third phone ping, is he going to walk all the way back again for the fourth? No. He'd probably get in his vehicle, right? And drive all the way back to the grain shed. It makes sense, doesn't it? And then what that would mean is, whilst Brenner can get Dylan to come back, Brenner can then assault and hurt Dylan. And then with Dylan's truck literally being right here, then Brenner can put Dylan inside of that truck, Brenner adjusts the seat briefly, and then drive on off to a wash. Does that make sense? The only alternative way would be the second phone ping, which was at the grain shed, probably parking the grain truck. Shortly after that, then Brenner took Dylan out inside of the grain shed. But then how would that explain the third phone ping being all the way back at Dylan's farm? Would the phone have been on Dylan? That's the thing. If it was, then how did Brenner get Dylan down to Dylan's farm? Was he carrying him all the way? Probably not. Did Brenner put Dylan inside of his own truck just to drive down there? Probably not. Because then, multiple trucks would have been involved and there would have been multiple different tracks which weren't mentioned. And Brenner's truck wasn't mentioned or talked about much in terms of evidence and this and that and distance. So I think that rules that out. The only possibility I could think of to explain Brenner being present at Dylan's farm for the third phone ping would be Brenner went down there to get a hold of Dylan's truck instead of using his own, so he doesn't, incriminate himself as much. And maybe Brenner had Dylan's phone on him at the time, taking stuff of Dylan as you go along to then dispose of later on. Is that a possibility? I still stick with the first concept, that the third phone ping at Dylan's farm was of Dylan. The fourth at Jim Brenner's trailer was the end of Dylan and his journey. That Dylan was probably called back, and in doing so had to take the vehicle back there instead of having to walk left, right and centre, because it'd be too much, right? Once is enough walking. And then with the truck being there, Jim Brenner has the opportunity to operate it. I'm going to go with that option, okay? But in doing so, I just want to remeasure the distance. Take in mind, there's give and take. If this yellow marker journey of 26 miles can be done in a shorter amount of time, maybe we can shift it around. Less mileage here, more mileage applied to the blue markers lines. Does that make sense? But that can be done in another video. We can't do everything all at once. So if I refer back to this third phone ping on a Saturday, bear in mind all phone pings mentioned just beforehand, this is all still to do with Saturday, the 28th of May, okay? Let's get the measurement stick out. And I guess we can do it in the same way as we did before. Is there any way to flip the image? Oh, it's already flipped, okay. Briefly put it there. Briefly put it here. Oh yeah. Pardon me. Just make sure we go at a steady rate so we don't make too many fuck-ups. Now, as I was saying, if that's about 6.5 miles, if that is 6.5 miles, then it's like, well, you can't drive the vehicle anymore, because if I'm being strict, okay, if I'm truly being strict to the mileage Candice Cooley has said, 65 miles, at this point, 6.5 here, up to this exact point, as you see on screen. Is it possible for me to zoom in? This tip here, although it falls short of the grain shed, this final tip here, I was trying to line it, is basically roughly 6.5 miles. If you turned around from this point and returned the truck back to the farm, that would be 13 miles. Add that on to the Thursday, Friday journey by Dylan, the 52 miles, that would eventually total 65 miles in total, as described by Candice Cooley. Do you see how it doesn't quite work? Because up to this point, it doesn't go up to the wash, so it doesn't really apply. I mean, if we went past it to about here and say that's what was meant instead, you'd have to adjust the 65-mile total and up it more. 52 plus 2 lots of 6.50 miles, right? I'm not great with maths, being realistic, straight to the point. So, it's a little bit messy, right? Hopefully you can follow with this. If I'm referring back to that option I chose with Dylan taking the truck to the grain shed, you'd have to stop here, about 6.21 miles, get out, get hurt, attacked, dumped into the truck. Brenner takes control and drives it forwards to this point here, which is about 6.50 miles. Any more distance over this way to maybe get into the wash, the mileage exceeds it. As you can see on screen, there's no point even trying. So you see what I'm saying? If you want to keep it strict, which I have done, it doesn't quite, it exceeds the total. Okay? Now, who's to say that of Dylan's truck went in that direction to the grain shed? But surely it would have to, because how else would it get there? You know, if Dylan's not going to drive it up to there, well, drive it back there, hence why the 4th phone ping is in that spot, then who else would go and collect it? Brenner. And this is what I don't understand. Do you think Brenner would cover 5 miles on foot, example, the red line, walk all the way across that desert just to Dylan's farm to get a hold of Dylan's truck? It doesn't seem really possible because he's lazy. I don't think he could be bothered. And it's been described that Brenner didn't ride the horse either, so he wouldn't have even used that to get all the way down to the farm. So how else could Dylan's vehicle have been accessed, and who? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, if it was Brenner, the only possible way, and I don't even know if it's worth thinking, Brenner got into his own truck, drove all the way down to here, got out, got into Dylan's truck, drove all the way up to the grain shed where Dylan is at, and then did whatever. And if not that, Brenner first of all got Dylan into his truck, into Brenner's truck, drove all the way down to Dylan's farm, got out, and then put Dylan's body inside of Dylan's truck, and Brenner drove Dylan's truck to wherever. Do you see the different options? I think the most important question we've got to ask ourselves is, if Dylan's truck was truly used to dispose of Dylan, who and how did they get a hold of Dylan's truck? Did they have to walk all the way down to Dylan's farm? Or did Dylan drive his truck to somewhere, such as the grain shed, for whatever reason, and then Dylan was taken out, and then it provided the opportunity for the suspect on the spot, present, to then use the truck, and then all they had to do afterwards was drive it back. But then that leaves the next question. The truck supposedly returned back on the same day after the job was done. Okay, so you imagine this, we'll fast forward. Coming back from whichever direction, down whichever road, parks it up, maybe gives it a clean inside and out because there was no evidence found, supposedly, as described by Candice. As soon as that person gets out of the truck, takes the gun with them, because that's supposedly where Dylan always kept his gun, and locked it, What did the suspect do then? Like, you get out of the truck and it's like, well, how do I get back to my trailer, such as Brenner or even Don? What do you use to get back? You're going to walk it? Once again, do you honestly think the suspect would walk 5-6 miles? 5-6 miles to get to Dylan's farm in the very first place, possibly to get a hold of the truck, and then what? Another 5-6 miles after that's all been done, just to get back to, the person's place of living. That's what I don't quite understand. It doesn't seem to tie in with one another, unless there is like a missing point. But this is the problem I always come down to. You can do all the different angles, all the different distance checks and possible routes, but it always comes down to the question of, how did the person get a hold of Dylan's truck? Did they have to walk all the way down, or did Dylan bring them the truck indirectly and open the opportunity to use it? You get what I'm saying? And if that was the case, it just wouldn't work with Candice Cooley's predictions, estimates. Candice Cooley's estimates, such as Dylan bringing his truck all the way to the grain shed, it already, exceeds the mileage from how I've calculated it. So it couldn't really apply. That's why the only other way would be if you're down here, okay, and then you drive, what, so many miles up this way? You see? So many miles here, and then come all the way back down. Or in this direction, up to roughly this point here, or south, down here. You get me? That is why I included these blue lines as alternatives, because if you start going over this way, it just doesn't work. But if Dylan is over here and his body is, then how do you go from here to there and get the correct mileage? You can't. It's not exactly possible. Unless you literally drive across off-road. But then again, I don't think that's good for the vehicle. This is why it's messy. Okay? If people are able to find a quicker alternative route to get from Lucin to Montello, then so be it. Then that might be helpful. But to be fair, when I looked myself, early on, people were saying, oh yeah, it's like 40 miles from Lucin to Montello. Fast forward a little bit, then people are saying, oh no, it's like 30 miles from Lucin to Montello. And then the last one I heard of, and it was in one of those news articles, saying it's 27.5 miles from Lucin to Montello. And I'm kind of bordering onto that with 26 miles. So that could be around about the average of the actual time it takes to get down there. And if that's the case, then that might as well stick as it is, unless there's an alternative. And if you know a quicker alternative, or if you know a likely route Dylan would take on the Thursday and then coming back on a Friday later on, leave it down below. And if it works out as less mileage done, then you can put that mileage towards the mileage when disposing of Dylan, right? Is there any other roads? That's what we've got to look at. And is there any other washes, right? The only wash I know of within Lucin, and we have looked at it, let me just make sure I'm facing north, is this one down here. You can see it, the brown. You see that brown, like almost like lake. It's not a lake. Like brown, like river in terms of the shape of it and how it bends round. How long does it go on for until it comes to a dead end? truly, I don't know. I mean, it looks very thin in some areas, but it looks like it continues as it spirals. And then once we get to this point, it looks like it disperses and it almost becomes very narrow and then suddenly quite wide. And then at that point, it looks like it comes to a dead end where it might drain off. So that's the question. Is this the wash Candice Cooley was referring to as the classified area, the area where no one has been since because they don't know this place? They don't know it exactly. Everyone else might have been up this way, nearer to Lucin Pond, like Lance, but they've not been further down here. Is that the classified place? This is the ultimate question. And this is why the whole distance is important, because as described by Candice Cooley, just zoom on out back here, 65 miles, so much of it was done by Dylan and the remainder was done by the suspect. Okay, comes like the triangle, the pyramid, right? If people calculate the distance differently, if you have a different pyramid of your own, feel free to list it down below and we'll see how it applies on the maps, right? I just want to focus in on Dylan's farm and just look in the different directions. If we look south, you got a road down here, right? How far does it go? Is there anything of interest down here? Yes or no? We could even do this as a part 2 so we don't get too drained. We could hammer in on Dylan's farm and say, what is 6.5 miles north? What's over there? What's 6.5 miles east, south, west? I think we'll do that. It's probably for the best, because then if people have got little updates in between, then we can apply it, because I do not want to get too confused. If we zoom out for now, that's what I've made. That's my project at this moment in time. Look down here, the chop shop is roughly within the radius of that 6.5 mile. As described by Candice Cooley, she in a way did, well, I don't know if you'd say contradict herself. As you heard, she said it's not a big radius, but it's a vast radius. Well, that sounds like you contradicted yourself. Basically, I think what she's referring to is when you look on the maps, the radius isn't that big compared to that 15.4 mile radius of Dylan's final phone ping as described in the past over this way. And some of you will know about that because I made a video on it and a rough radius without the actual circle, and you saw how much it covered. It branched all the way into Montello up to this point here towards the end of that farm. That's how far out it stretched, and it didn't really help. Whereas with this radius, it is smaller and it's within Lucin. It doesn't cross over to different towns or cities. So that's what she means, probably, Candice Cooley, that it's smaller, the radius. But why is it vast? Well, she's probably referring to when you're actually there, boots on ground, you're looking around and you say 6.5 miles over that way, over this way, and over that way. And it's like, but it looks so far, it looks so ahead. It's because there is not much to gauge your distance from what's in front of you. You might see mountains many, 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 many miles away, but you've got nothing really else closer to gauge. You know, if you had a truck 6.5 miles north and you stood at the epicenter and you look north, you can say, well, where that truck is, that's 6.5 miles. Oh, it doesn't look as bad now. If you take that truck away and you just got to guess in the distance, which looks really far, it can be a bit deceiving, right? So I think that's what she was basically saying. But within this possible 6.5 mile radius, I'm not saying they went in a straight line. That's what you got to understand. It could be as close as here, such as this point. How would you cover 6.5 miles worth if that's the length of distance you've got to cover, such as that blue line? Well, just very briefly, you might go down this yellow road, turn off at some point, such as here, drive up, then turn right, if it was a road or off-road, come all the way down back to this yellow line, drive all the way. Do you know what? I'm going to demonstrate it to you right now instead of trying to make up on the spot. Just to show you what 6.5 miles could look like beside from the basic default radius as you see in blue. Okay? Just so you can maybe apply it yourself. And it's only a rough one, this, so don't get too focused. Maybe here. Where would I go as an example? That looks like a wash. That's a bit too far though. Well, let's just say. There we go. You zoom on out. Can I get rid of that? Perfect. There you go. I can't change the colour unfortunately because I'm not in Project, but it's like a measurement. But you see from here, that double yellow line, all the way to here, coming up north, turning right, coming back the same way but on a different route, and then parking up to somewhere like here, that's about 6.5 miles. And then if you went back the same exact way, then that's a total of, was that the 13 miles, which would tie in line with my strict, estimates. When you zoom on out, just because of the shape of it, it looks shorter, that amount of distance visually compared to that blue line, which is almost the same, which is basically the same distance. It's just that because it's in a straight line, you perceive it as it being longer. But it's not. So that's what I'm saying. You could cover 6.5 miles in your garden, just walking back and forth or going round and round in circles, and technically you've covered more mileage than Dylan walking from the grain shed to his farm, cutting across the desert, which sounds and appears, greater when it's not. Does that make sense? Just wanted to throw that point in. And this like rough one what I gave, when we look here, is there any kind of wash where you can see like a brownish tint, but that's not of a wash? I think that's more to do with the sun, some kind of reflection, because you do see like kind of like rainbows and stuff like that. But if we're just briefly looking here, can any of you confirm what's on screen now is a wash? Do you know where you see all those like lines, how they, almost like a root effect, they branch off from one another? Is that a wash? Is it a spring? Is it a river? Is it a pond? Probably not a pond from how it looks compared to ponds we have seen. But I'm just throwing all these different names out because, it's been described as many washes out there. Well, okay, many washes. But where are they? You see what I'm saying? No one's really questioning or asking, where are they? What about the other washes? Everyone refers to the wash near Lucin Pond. Yeah, but if that's the one Candice Cooley is not at, then it's kind of pointless. You get what I'm saying? That's why I'm asking these questions. That's why I'm pointing this stuff out. So, I think that will do for now. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that, or at least was able to make sense of it. As said, if you've got a different route, direction, plan, feel free to list it down below. This video, this map analysis, taking it all to mind with the phone pings in the past, bringing it all together. This was the whole point. As I said, you look back a month or two ago, I directly said, this what we're doing now might tie in with another point down the line. That's why we dissect everything, pull it apart, stitch it all back together as one at a later point. We're doing that right now, such as the gas consumption, and then tying it in, stitching it with a past dissection of the phone pings. And then if there's something else to be dissected down the line, whatever that might be, let's just randomly say Don's or Jim's phone pings, and they tie in, then that can be stitched in with the other two pieces. So it all connects together, but that can only happen with time, right? So as I said, leave additional thoughts, opinions, questions down below. We'll leave it there for now. I'll probably do a part 2 follow-up of more the north, east, south, focus more around Dylan's farm, because I've not really looked too hard in that spot, okay? I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and good night.